I want to thank Mary and the Alzheimer's Association and all of you for being here today, because this is an issue that is quite serious, and unfortunately we know it is not going away. I don't often have the opportunity to thank Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I want to thank him as well for his leadership in moving the effort for the report that we're recognizing today, along with former Secretary Kim Bell-Shea and, of course, my colleague, Senator Elaine Alquist, who has really been fighting the good fight for many, many years. The numbers are staggering and overwhelming. If we're pushing 600,000 Californians currently dealing with Alzheimer's, and that's just the individual patient, not, of course, the many family members, the caregivers, and the entire universe around that individual, so multiply it by many-fold, will, over just the next 20 years, grow to many millions, actually about 1.1 million. So that's going to be an increase of twofold in just 20 years. And the costs also will be, just the financial costs will be extraordinary as well. The estimates on the unpaid caregiving costs are currently about 37 million, with predictions of growing to about 72 million. And then, of course, the actual medical care costs will double as well, from about 16 billion to about 31 billion. So as our population continues to age, to have a disease about which we know so very little, don't know its cause, we don't know what the extraneous factors are that exacerbate the situation, and how broadly it's going to impact our ever-aging population, this is a frightful situation. We do not have our arms around this yet. So this plan is a really good step forward in that it really addresses the very fact of it. We need to get more information to Californians so they better understand it. And also, as with anything that is mentally related or cognitive related, there is a stigma attached. And we have to recognize that before we can get beyond it. So that's a very good first step as well. And then, of course, we need to make sure that there is access to high-quality care, because that is the human demand upon us, that we need to ensure that there is opportunity for dignity as individuals and families find their way through this, what is initially, and hopefully that initial reaction can be mitigated, a nightmarish situation. And then also support for the family caregivers as well. This is life-changing. And I speak from experience. My mother, who's 89 years old, has probably been dealing with Alzheimer's now for about 10 years. And I've completely lost track of time. She is well cared for. That's the blessing of our family. Though it, of course, has been very challenging for my father, who's now 90 years old, my sisters, and me. Lost track of time because I can barely remember exactly where it started and where the thresholds were and how things began to change. But for those families who find themselves in a situation where members need to either change jobs or leave their jobs because they have no options, this can be devastating, completely devastating. I want to just, and if someone has already done this, I think the words are so important, it's not, there's no fault in repeating them. Maria Shriver's quote at the beginning of the summary of the report, and I know it's in the report as well, she says that the truth is we simply must put Alzheimer's on the front burner, because if we don't, Alzheimer's will not just devour our memories. It will also break our women, cripple our families, devastate our healthcare system, and decimate the legacy of our generation. So this is not hyperbole. This is just the facts before us. But we have certainly been able to faced major challenges before, and I think we have every opportunity to do so again. There have been so many books written about the subject, of course. I don't have the name of the book in my mind or its author, but it was a slightly different approach to dealing with the disease. And it suggested that we all, as we participate in our day and our daily activities, have agreed upon a certain understanding of what reality is. It's our collective reality. That those who are dealing with Alzheimer's are merely in a different reality. It is their reality, different from how we see ours. And as a caregiver, to the degree that we're able to share that other reality, even if it's moments at a time, there's great richness and love and communication to be found and shared even in those sporadic and rare moments. And that's one of the challenges as well. I have shared at the Memory Walk in the Bay Area over a couple of years, a bit of my mother's progression, that she has for a lifetime been someone who loves crossword puzzles. So this is a deep memory for her, and of course it is those deepest memories that are the last to be lost. And so even with some of the earlier stages of her Alzheimer's, I would see her seated in the den working on her crossword puzzles in books. We would just get as many books because it was the one thing that she could focus on, and focus at times for hours. And they really engaged her. I thought, you know, I've never really looked into her books. Is it all just gibberish, or is she really doing these puzzles? And so finally, it got me out of my seat to sit next to her, side by side, put my arm around her, and we'd do puzzles together. And I very quickly learned that she not only was doing these puzzles, but it was hardly in a sporadic fashion. It was very deliberative. Before she would write down whatever she thought the answer to a clue was, that the answer being, let's say, 9 letters across, she would check all the down clues as well to make sure she had the right answer, because of course she did her puzzles in pen, not in pencil. And so she was deliberative, and she would know words faster than I would know them. She would know words I never even heard of. It was really stunning. But aside from her dazzling me with her competency, while we were doing those puzzles, it was as if nothing had ever changed, and my mother was completely and wholly there. Over years, she has not been able to keep up with her crossword puzzles. At this point, we're doing puzzles on a tabletop. But whereas I remember when I was a kid, she used to love those kinds of puzzles, and she would get these puzzles, 2,500 pieces to a box, these tiny little things, and somehow she would put them all together. It was amazing. So now we're dealing with puzzles that have 24 pieces in them. They're very basic. They're made for very young children. But again, it focuses her attention, just the earnestness in which she puts in the effort to get these pieces right. It really tugs at my heart. And again, it's that human connection that we can find even in the simplest task. Again, our family is blessed in that her care is good, and I'm also very convinced that it's because the love that my father is able to continue to provide, and the attentiveness of my sisters and me, though we live across the country and can only get to be with her so many times during the year, that her spirits are very good, even in her confused state, and she's also blessed with good physical health. But I know that that quality of love has sustained her very, very much. And I think that's why we also are so eager to continue to make sure we invest in our community infrastructures to keep people in their homes and in their communities rather than in institutions. And it also is fiscally wise for us as a state, because we know the costs of institutional care are so much greater. And I've had a real taste of that this year and past couple of years as I've now served on the Senate Budget Committee and now chairing the Senate Budget Committee. The proposal by the administration was to eliminate adult day health care. We would have saved about $174 million, though we know if a percentage of those who are participating in adult day health care were to make their way to long-term care, the $14,000 we spend annually would be, any savings would be erased because of the $48,000 we, the state taxpayers, would be spending on long-term care. That said, when we don't have money for even the $14,000, we're not left with choices. But working with the administration, we have fought to preserve adult day health care. We have fought to preserve multi-purpose senior service programs as well. And I make mention of this because there are now federal dollars that we can access that did not exist before the health care reform that came out of Washington, D.C. And if there are any people that you know who doubt the value of that health care reform and are even talking about repealing it, tell them they're out of their minds and that this is of great value. Yes, let's hear it for health care reform. So there's probably not a well-known part of it called Community First Choice, and we were informed of it. It's a new aspect, and even though this is the first year that we'll be applying for it, it's worth about $121 million for the 2011-12 budget that we can score for the balancing of our budget. And the Department of Finance has agreed with us. The legislative analyst has agreed with us. These are real dollars, and they're meant specifically to keep people in the community as a first choice. So we're putting this into sustaining our in-home support service budget this year, but we are also told that a year from now, we'll also be able to access those same federal community first choice dollars to help sustain, if not augment, the state dollars and the one-for-one match that we get from the federal government currently for adult day health care services. So we've got to be as inventive as possible, as creative as possible, because the quality of life depends upon, to the degree that we as policymakers can ensure that there is the option of staying within our communities and keeping people in their homes where they're safest, where they're most familiar, and where they're most loved, because that will very significantly increase the quality of their life and probably the length of life as well. So thank you all for your advocacy, for your engagement in what is a very important issue, and we're going to keep working. I know that we have had, remind me, we did have some success, or is it now in question with the new Congress with federal dollars, or is that still on the up? Everything's in question right now? This is for research at the federal level? Yes. It's looking good? All right, because we spend billions of dollars appropriately on research for cancer, for heart disease, but when it came to Alzheimer's, we were just putting in a couple $100 million. We've got to up that federal investment in research as well so we can finally understand what's causing this and then, of course, look for a cure. Thank you so very much.